Hello, this is Commando Yi and welcome to another edition of fully narrated gameplay. In this game we're learning Top Lane Singed and we're against the Nasus. The enemy jungle Shaco is running Smite with Ignite and I want to know exactly where he's starting, so I'm going to head over to the topside enemy jungle. In the meantime, our mid lane Anivia and our jungle Lee Sin are going to keep an eye out on the river to defend against invades. Unfortunately, our bottom lane Thresh and Tristana do not share the same sense of teamwork and went straight to lane and sat under turret. This left our Lee Sin wide open to an invade by the enemy team through the blue buff side of the jungle. Unlucky for us, the enemy team capitalized on our lack of teamwork by invading exactly through this path into our jungle. We see the Mystic shot by the enemy Ezreal as the blue team wraps around the blue buff side of the jungle and comes towards our Lee Sin and Anivia in the mid lane. Unfortunately, Anivia does not notice this and does not realize just how much danger she is in. She fails to react to the situation quickly and ends up getting pulled by the enemy Blitzcrank, handing over first blood to the blue team. And it is at this exact moment that our support Thresh starts flaming our entire team, saying that he always gets these teams. Luckily, no one responded to him in game, but in truth this is pretty much the fault of the bottom lane. Now, since the enemy Shaco does have Ignite, there's a very high probability that he will come after Lee Sin at the red buff, so I'm going to place a ward by the brush behind the red buff. Keep an eye on this spot for later. Afterwards, the laning phase has begun and we're trying to learn how to play Singed in lane. I'm trying to get my poison trail to go on the enemy Nasus, but I can't quite seem to get it. After clearing the first minion wave, I'm trying to get one more CS so that I can hit level 2 and get my fling. I'm thinking maybe I can lay down a poison trail and fling Nasus into it as a way to get some damage on him. It does not seem like I'll be able to get much damage on the enemy Nasus, so I start heading towards the enemy blue buff to check on the enemy Shaco. As I'm heading down the river, our Lee Sin is going to do his red buff and we see the enemy Shaco show up on the ward that we had placed outside the red buff. Shaco is going for the kill on Lee Sin, and knowing that Lee Sin is in danger, we're going to collapse on Shaco. Lee Sin finds himself in a losing battle against the enemy Shaco, but he does manage to smite the red buff, allowing him to reach level 3. Lee Sin takes the blast cone to come back over the wall, and we know that Shaco has no mobility because his Q is down and he does not have flash. We draft off Lee Sin to gain some mobility, flash towards the enemy Shaco and flip him back into our poison trail to pick up the kill on the enemy Shaco. After the save on Lee Sin, we're going to go back to laning as normal, laning against the enemy Nasus. We're still trying to figure out this champion and we cannot seem to get the poison trail on the enemy Nasus. The laning phase continues like this for some time with no significant events taking place. We are pushing pretty hard though, so I'm going to ward the river brush to fend off against a gank by the enemy Shaco. Our early game efforts to save Lee Sin are going to help out the bottom lane a short while later. Lee Sin comes down to the bottom lane with both buffs at level 3 for a gank on the enemy AD carry and support. The gank goes somewhat badly and Tristana almost gets killed. The enemy jungle Shaco, who failed to get a lead over our Lee Sin, shows up in the bottom lane for a counter gank, only to get destroyed by the Thresh and Lee Sin. It's safe to say that if we had not thwarted the enemy Shaco earlier, this would have ended badly for our team. Meanwhile, we're back in the top lane, clearing out minion waves best we can, shoving in the top lane and going into the enemy jungle every now and then to keep an eye on the enemy jungler. We hit the Scryer's Bloom to scan the topside enemy jungle and instead find the enemy Shaco hopping over the wall with the help of a blast cone on our way back. Seeing us, he panics and deceives immediately, running away from the area. We head over to the mid lane to see if we can pull off a gank, and seeing that nothing's going to happen here, we head back to the top lane to lane against the enemy Nasus. As we get back to lane, we're going toward the river brush to keep an eye out for the enemy Shaco, then we get back to shoving the minion waves as usual. At this time, I had failed to notice that Nasus had picked up a Sheen, dealing a ton of damage, and he almost kills us. Luckily, Lee Sin comes by to return the favor from earlier and kills the enemy Nasus. After that, we're going to head down into the river to pick up the honey fruit to recover some HP and mana. Also, it looks like Anivia is very low on HP and she could use some help clearing this minion wave, so we're going to go mid and clear out the minion wave, then head back to lane. As we get back to lane, I make a really bad play tanking a ton of minion damage in an attempt to clear them with my poison trail. This forces us to recall, and when we get back to base, we're going to pick up a ninja tabby which will reduce the damage that Nasus, Shaco, and Ezreal will be dealing to us. If you're wondering why I have 3 dark seals, it's because the increased healing from potions passive is not unique. This means with 3 dark seals I will get a lot more healing with my refillable potion, and this will throw off the enemy team as they try to kill me. As we go back to laning against Nasus, we keep an eye on the mid lane and notice that the enemy Orianna has our Anivia on the ropes. The enemy Orianna chases our Anivia through the river and Anivia tries to use her wall to get away, but Orianna catches her with her ultimate. Luckily, both Lee Sin and myself were already heading towards this area as soon as we saw this fight unfolding. Seeing that she is doomed, Orianna gives up and we pick up a kill on the enemy Orianna. With our work finished, once again we're going to go back to the top lane and continue farming as normal. As we're clearing out our top minion wave, we notice that our Lee Sin is making an aggressive play into the enemy jungle. Knowing that there might be a skirmish here, we start heading over to the top side enemy jungle. Lee Sin steals the enemy Shaco's blue buff, and as Shaco deceives to get away, he runs into us instead. With Shaco's mobility down, it's time to chase down Shaco by drafting off Lee Sin, activating our ultimate, and flinging Shaco back into our poison trail to pick up another kill. As we head back up the river, we spot a control ward in the nearby brush, so we decide to clear that first, then head over to the mid lane where we're going to shove a minion wave past the turret, and then we're going to head back to the top lane where the enemy Nasus is shoving the minion wave into our tower. Eventually I pick a fight with the enemy Nasus, and looks like he's farmed up his Siphon Strike quite nicely and deals a ton of damage, forcing me to recall to base. Since we took the Summoner Spellbook Keystone, we were able to swap our Ignite to Teleport quite a while ago. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, our Lee Sin and Thresh have died, and it looks like the enemy Ezreal and Blitzcrank are pushing in to tower dive our AD carry Tristana. Seeing that Tristana is in trouble, we're going to teleport to a ward near the enemy bottom lane Tri-Brush and gank the enemy Blitzcrank and Ezreal from behind. We ping Tristana to let her know that we're coming in as we activate our ultimate and advance on the enemy bottom lane. Tristana follows up by jumping forward to attack the enemy Ezreal, and we fling Ezreal into our poison trail, taking down the enemy AD carry. After that, we're going to tower dive the enemy Blitzcrank with the help of the respawn Lee Sin, who came back to the bottom lane to help with this dive. As the tank, it is our job to tank all the turret shots as we take down the enemy Blitzcrank. Now, all of this roaming that I'm doing does cause me to fall behind considerably in lane in terms of CS. But I'm not too worried about that, as I am helping my team out, and this is going to pay off much later. We end up getting the enemy mid lane turret and bottom lane turret in exchange for our top lane turret. Nasus will not be able to push our tier 2 turret, as he will get chased down by myself and Lee Sin every time he comes up here. Since we've taken the outer mid lane turret and bottom lane turret, the correct play now towards closing out the game is to rotate towards the top side of the map and take out the outer top lane turret. Now, while we should be getting the enemy top lane turret next, my team is now with me and it does not make any sense for me to push on my own, so I'm going to leave the lane and head down towards the mid lane. Thanks to a ward in the enemy jungle, at this point we notice the enemy mid lane Orianna heading towards the bottom lane, followed by the jungle Shaco behind her. We start picking our bottom lane to play safe because this means there is going to be a 4-man dive in the bottom lane. We start running down the river towards the bottom lane ourselves, and Thresh is clearing wards in the river trying to gain control of vision in the area. At this moment, the enemy Shaco pops up behind Thresh and the teamfight begins. We activate our ultimate and run down there, throwing down our Mega Adhesive and flinging the enemy Ezreal back into our team. Anivia teleports in, making this fight a 5 vs 4, and we wipe out 4 members of the enemy team, losing no one in return. I'm pretty sure at this moment that the enemy team is not happy with their top lane Nasus for allowing this to happen. The enemy Nasus is trying its best to take out our tier 2 top lane turret, but it's no good as we've already recalled and we head back to lane to drive him off. As Nasus is making his getaway, he runs into Anivia and Lee Sin, and they both take him down. Once again, the correct play right now is to rotate towards the top side of the map and take out the outer top lane turret. And so we shove the minion wave into the top lane turret, and the enemy Shaco comes in to defend it. We fling the enemy Shaco into our poison trail, and he's no longer able to defend the turret. We start pushing past the turret in the top lane, and the enemy Nasus comes in to drive us off. We start heading back towards the mid lane to see if we can make a pick on the enemy Orianna, and in the meantime our AD carry Tristana and Thresh are pushing in the bottom lane pretty hard. Sensing an opportunity, the enemy Nasus teleports to a ward in the bottom lane Tri-Brush and tries to attack our Tristana and Thresh from behind. Unfortunately, he has not built any armor items and Tristana is fed, so Nasus goes down quickly. Afterwards, the Tristana and Thresh are pushing the bottom lane while Ezreal and Blitzcrank are trying to defend it. We activate our ultimate and run in behind with Lee Sin, cutting off Ezreal and Blitzcrank from going back to base, and we get caught by the enemy Orianna. We fling and ignite Orianna before we go down, and this allows Tristana to pick up the kill on Orianna, followed by picking up a kill on the enemy Blitzcrank. Dying to take down 2 opponents is not so bad. Afterwards, our Tristana takes down the tier 2 turret in the bottom lane and tries to get away as the respawning Nasus comes after her. Unfortunately, Nasus is still behind and does not have enough armor, so Lee Sin and Tristana manage to take him down. After that, a series of kills get traded back and forth, but we're going to ignore all that, run straight down mid, and take down the tier 2 turret in the mid lane. With all the outer turrets in the mid lane and bottom lane down, we really need to rotate towards the top side of the map and take out the outer top turret. We take the shortest path towards the top lane through the enemy jungle and drop a ward near the wolf camp to get some vision on the enemy jungle. As we try to take the top turret, we expect that the enemy team will pass through this ward as they come to stop us. And sure enough, as I'm clearing a control ward in the topside enemy jungle, we see the enemy Shaco coming after us and the enemy Nasus to the left of us, so I'm going to take the blast gun over the wall to get back to safety. After that, we go back to laning against Nasus as normal, and we're not really able to accomplish a whole lot pushing against Nasus. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, our Tristana makes a very aggressive play jumping forward, and this allows the enemy Shaco to kill her immediately. Following this, the enemy Ezreal and Shaco try to take down Thresh, who makes a brilliant getaway using the enemy Raptors. Thresh flashes over the wall to get away and Lee Sin comes in to shield him, but it's no good as Ezreal takes him down with his ultimate. The enemy Shaco is still in the area and we had started heading down towards the mid lane as soon as we saw this fight unfolding. We flash fling Shaco for the kill, avenging Tristana and Thresh. The correct play for our team right now is still to get the outer top lane turret, as that is the easiest objective towards closing out the game. What follows instead is a platinum grade clown fiesta of random events until Anivia gets the top lane turret. After that we make a pick on the enemy Blitzcrank and use our numbers advantage to go secure the Baron buff. And now with the Baron buff we make the final push of the game. The enemy team tried their best to stop us from getting the Baron buff, and in the process they lost Nasus and Orianna. With myself and Lee Sin low on health, we both recall to buy additional items and then we head back down the mid lane where our Tristana and Thresh are still pushing the lane. The enemy Shaco died heroically off screen trying to take down our Tristana, and Anivia took out the enemy Blitzcrank. As we push into the enemy base 5 against 3, all the time and effort that we had spent into getting Tristana ahead pays off as she jumps forward trying to take down the enemy Orianna. Lee Sin and Thresh take down the enemy Nasus and we activate Righteous Glory, running down the enemy Ezreal, flipping him into our poison trail, and we kill him too. With 4 members of the enemy team dead, we proceed to take the enemy Nexus. The key to this game lies mostly in the rotations. As a new Singed player, I was sucking pretty hard in lane and I couldn't make much of an impact on the enemy Nasus, so I started rotating towards the mid lane, the bottom lane, and the enemy jungle, trying to get my team ahead. The second thing to notice was that the correct play for our team for the longest time was to rotate towards the top side of the map and take out the enemy team's top lane outer turret. I did not try to force down the enemy top lane turret on my own, as that would have ended up in the enemy Nasus getting fed. Instead, I played around the team that I had, helping them with the things that they were doing in the mid lane and the bottom lane until they were ready to help take down the top turret. This patience was crucial towards helping us win the game. If you enjoyed this video, do subscribe to the channel, follow on Twitter, and check out the video links on either side. Leave a comment about the kind of content you'd like to see in future videos, and check out the Patreon link if you'd like to support this channel directly.